Today we'll be solving equations with rational numbers. This is Open Up Unit 5, Lesson 15. So today's goal, I can solve equations that include rational numbers and have rational number solutions. That means we're going to be working with equations that have fractions, decimals, negatives, positives. So some important things to note. One thing is that the sum of a number and its opposite is always 0. So if you're trying to find a number that you can add to something and get 0, you want to use the opposite. The product of a number and its reciprocal is 1. So if you're trying to find a number that you can multiply by something and get 1 as the product, you're going to use the reciprocal. Let's solve some equations. So the first one, x plus 8 equals -5. This will be a nice little preview of Unit 6. So we're going to try to figure out what x is. And so to do that, we have to think, how can I undo this plus 8? So adding and subtracting are opposites, so one thing I could do is subtract 8 from both sides. Notice though that subtracting 8 is the same as adding -8. So instead you may want to say I'm adding -8 to both sides. So on the left here, if we have x plus 8 and we add -8, 8 plus -8 is 0, so we're just left with x. On the right hand side, we have -5 plus -8, and we get -13. So we think x equals -13. If we're going to check that, we put in -13 for x. So we'd say, is -13 plus 8 really equal to -5? And it is, so we must have solved that correct. Let's try this one. 8x equals -5. So to solve this equation, to undo multiplying by 8, I can divide by 8 to both sides, or instead of that, I could multiply each side by the reciprocal of 8, which is multiplying by 1/8. Either way is going to work out the same, because if we do 1/8 times 8, we get 1. 1 times x is just x. On the right-hand side, if you need to, you could write -5 over 1 times 1 over 8, and then multiply straight across, and we have -5/8. So x equals -5/8. Again, if I'm going to check that, I would just want to see if 8 times -5/8 equals -5, and depending on how you do it, you may want to cross cancel the 8s, or you might want to put 8 over 1 and multiply as -40 over 8 to get -5, but either way, this checks out. Let's have you try one on your own. So how could you solve an equation like x plus -9.2 equals 7.5? Go ahead and try to do this on your own. Pause the video and then come back and see if you got it right. So you've got some options. You could subtract -9.2 from both sides, or it may be easier to add the opposite of -9.2, which is 9.2, to both sides. And when you do 7.5 plus 9.2, you get that x equals 16.7. Okay, how about this one, trying on your own? How could you solve like x times 4 equals 3? Again, pause the video, see if you can solve it, and then come back and check. So you could divide both sides by 4, or you can multiply by the reciprocal of 4. So the reciprocal of 4 is 1/4, and we're going to get 3 times 1/4 is 3/4. So x equals 3/4. So to recap, addition and subtraction, they're inverse operations and they undo each other. So if you want to subtract, you could instead add the opposite. Multiplying and dividing are inverse operations, but they undo each other. So instead of dividing, if you want to, you could multiply by the reciprocal. Have a great day.